Okay, colleagues, shall we start the meeting, please? Welcome. Agenda item number 1, apologies. Okay, there are late items, there are none that we're aware of, no. There are, number 3, receipt of petitions, there are none. Number 4, identification of urgent items to which call-in will not apply. That doesn't apply, there are none. Number 5, declarations of interest from anyone. Councillor Hussain. Okay, declarations of interest. Okay, none. To approve the minutes of the meeting held on 6th of September. Can I have somebody to second the minutes? Okay, they are seconded. Can I have a show of hands to approve them? Okay, approved. Okay, so agenda item 7, recommendations from Executive Scrutiny Board. We'll take them in turn as the particular agenda items come up. Moving on to the main business key decisions. And the first one is special education needs and disability provision in Derby. Councillor Russell, please. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Colleagues, please do excuse me. I'm just recovering from a cold, so if I cough or splutter, please do excuse me. It can't be as bad as the episode this morning, I'm sure, but yeah, thanks. Okay, so this report is here today to launch a consultation to review our current provision of special educational needs provision across the city for Derby's children and young people. I think I'm right in saying, having not been a member of this authority that long, this is the first time in a great number of years that the Council has reviewed the SEND strategy. And we have been called upon by government to consider this as all other local authorities have. This consultation has been months in the planning, and a number of partners have been consulted in drafting the original consultation document that we have before us tonight. They include organisations like Parent Carer Forum, Umbrella and schools across the city. At this point in time, across the city, the council spends well over £50 million a year on SEN provision. That's right and proper, but what this review seeks to do is to ensure that we direct that funding to the right places and ensure that the young people who receive it get the appropriate level of support that they need. I don't propose to go into masses of detail around this report. Colleagues will have had the report obviously for some time and had the chance to read it. It incorporates the consultation document, which is obviously available for anyone across the city to comment upon, and I look forward to receiving consultation responses on this. The consultation period starts on the 6th of November and will run for a 6-week period up until the 15th of December. And we will hold 2 special consultation events during November for interested parties to come along and chat to us here at the Council about the proposals contained therein. And the outcome of the consultation will clearly be discussed and scrutinised at length. Certainly myself and other Cabinet colleagues will be keeping a keen eye on this. And we intend to bring the responses to the consultation back to Cabinet on the 14th of March next year. If I may, Chair, just with reference to the recommendations from scrutiny last night, I understand that there was a good debate last night at scrutiny and that generally the report was well received, and a number of contributors from across all parties were involved in the discussion and welcomed the fact that we are having a review into the service. And looking at the recommendations from scrutiny, I'm happy to accept both recommendations and include them in the report, and I recommend that to Cabinet colleagues. So at this stage, Chair, I'd like to recommend the report to Cabinet, and obviously we'll be happy to answer any questions. We have Gmail here who can answer any technical questions that may arise from any member. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Russell. So questions, firstly Councillor Skelton and then Councillor Holmes. Thank you.
Thank you. Just like some more information about how parents were involved in developing these proposals. When did they start to be involved? Was it right at the beginning, or was it at the end? And did they manage to change anything of the proposals?
Any further questions? Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Just to respond to that, the Council has a SEND commissioning board in place, which includes a range of agency representations, including health, social care, and parent representatives, Parent Carer Forum, SENDIAS and Umbrella, and that's the vehicle we've used to consult. In addition to that, we've had separate meetings with those individual parents from those organisations to seek views. In terms of comments back, because of the breadth of this, they were sort of provided with information on what's involved, and we're engaging with them further during the consultation windows in order to help us shape proposals. Thank you, Chair.
I did ask when did that start?
Chetticum SEND Commissioning Board has been operating for the last 12 months, and Andy Smith, the Director of People Services, chairs that board, and certainly they've been part of those discussions. More specifically to these proposals, it's probably been in the last 3 months or so as the proposals began to emerge.
Councillor Skelton, are you okay with that? Okay. Councillor Holmes and then Councillor Graves.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Russell is right. We had a very good debate last night, a positive debate, cross-party. And I'd like to thank Councillor Stanton for allowing Councillor Willoughby from the Conservatives to address the board, because he has personal experience within his family, has 3 autistic sons. And so he brought a very valuable context to the debate. I'm very happy that Councillor Russell has accepted the recommendations. I think those 2 bullet points there, or 1 and 2, are very important to take on board. What I would say, I mean, we're not going to go through the debate again, but Councillor Willoughby gave one example as to why EHCPs are being in place at the right time and when the children need them. One example was that say we have an autistic child who may be very keen to answer a question from the teacher and put the hand up, you know, not in turn or whatever, that could be actually interpreted as bad behaviour. But with the proper training, the proper EHCPs in place, then that would be properly dealt with rather than, you know, wouldn't obviously lead normally to an exclusion, but you know what I mean, that could be an escalation, and before you know it, a child could be excluded rather than being dealt with via the EHCPs. So it's a very simplistic example, but it just gives a flavour of why this needs to be in place at the right time. And we want to work with you on this. And what I would ask, and I'm sure Councillor Russell has already spoken to, I think, Councillor Ralston, but who also has personal experience of this. We want to work cross-party, and if you can work with Councillor Willoughby and Ralston on this, we're willing to obviously work with you to make sure that the Council delivers this in the right way, and you know, it will actually be a great success.
Yes, absolutely, Councillor Holmes. I too have personal experience of this issue as a family member who has been through this process. So, although not a parent myself, yet. I understand that those valuable insights are really important, and I would be very, very happy to continue that dialogue with Councillor Ralston and begin one with Councillor Willoughby if he felt he had something to contribute. And I would welcome any other councillor of the authority feeding through the consultation process on this issue. It's not something we can muck about with. It's not political. It shouldn't be. It's about children and young people and ensuring they get the best that they possibly can from us in this city, and that's the most valuable thing to me, and that's what I want to try and ensure.
Okay, Councillor Graves, please.
Thank you, Councillor Banwaite. First of all, do I need to congratulate you on your avoiding and defeating your vote of no confidence in your own group? I offer my congratulations. On this issue, we did discuss this last night at the scrutiny committees, and if you look on 1.1, the financial issues, £55 million is being spent now, and we can see clearly where it's being spent in the areas of the majority of the money, but there's £23 million being spent like a discretionary area. Now, I did ask Mr Nizza yesterday whether that had altered in the last 4 years, and hopefully we can get some information on that. My concern about this, and I think we need to be clear with the schools out there, is how this might affect them, because obviously with a review there may be some ups and some downs, and I wonder whether the Cabinet member can offer some safeguards to schools that schools won't be overly affected if they're on the downward side of things. My real concern, and the concerns of many schools, will be that if this review is to tighten the criteria, will the effect be to remove some provision for some children? There is some movement that was highlighted yesterday that, for instance, we want to extend early years provision, which I think is a great thing, but that's going from 250,000 to 600,000. So obviously, if you're adding some money into that area, where is that money going to come from? Some children are going to lose out, and I just wonder if you can give us some safeguards. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Graves. Schools have been involved in the discussions in the run-up to the publication of this document, and I've met with a number of schools. I continue to meet with schools. I'm going to see a couple of nurseries next week. Of course, there is a vast amount of money spent on this agenda. The point to emphasise is there is no money being taken out of this budget. The budget will remain as it is. All we seek to do through this process is ensure that it is targeted at the young people that need it most, and the levels of care and provision around each EHCP plan is at appropriate level. There's no intention to remove provision away from young people in any regard, and the money that you talk about in terms of early years provision, the 600k, that money already exists in the system, but it's actually spread out rather than being collated in one pot, which is the plan, to bring it together into one pot for then a bidding process to pursue, dependent on the amount of young people that you have on roll that need additional support. But I'm happy for Gamal to fill in anything further if he feels necessary.
Okay, Councillor Repton, please, and then Councillor Hussain.
Thank you, Chair. I too welcome the positive cross-party support there is to rise to the challenges that this paper and this issue poses us. I do understand there are sensitivities, though. There is a nursery in my own ward where the head wants to talk to me and the local ward councillors, and I know also that Councillor Russell and officers will also rise to this challenge in listening to their concerns and explaining the options there actually are, and also the proposals on the way forward. So I will be involved in this, obviously, because it affects my ward, as I'm sure other councillors will, but I think it's the right way to proceed in this positive, measured way. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, I welcome this paper. I think the delivery model that we've got in place was probably developed good 20, 30 years ago. And for that length of time, or time in between, we've been bolting things on, either one aspect or the other, without fundamentally reviewing whether or not the way we are allocating resources indicates whether or not we're making the best use of those limited resources. And I think there are two assurances here. One is that this is not a money-saving device, because the money that's currently spent is ring-fenced. So we can take a genuine look at whether or not there are better models for delivering some aspects of those services. And if there is scope for us to redistribute the way resources are shared out, I think we should do that. And if it becomes a case of protecting each school, each nursery, each establishment which delivers an aspect of our service, then we will not be able to achieve our objectives in terms of ensuring that the money is spent in the most effective manner. And even if that entailed moving some of the money around, we should actually consult on that. Obviously, before we take the final decision, we will welcome any views. We may not get it right for the first time, but when we consult on it, we'll make sure any concerns which are put forward are properly and thoroughly considered before we actually make the final decision. And I welcome the all-party support on this particular issue, because we're spending a huge amount of money and we need to make sure that we are making best use of it.
Okay, any other questions, comments from anyone? Okay, so Cabinet to approve the recommendations and the recommendations from overview scrutiny as set out in the report. Can I have a show of hands, please? Okay, thank you, that's approved. Moving on to agenda item number 9, proposals to increase school places at Murray Park School, and that's Councillor Russell again, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is a well-trodden path. Obviously, the Council has a legal duty to ensure that there are sufficient school places for the population of young people it serves to seek as a local authority, and the expansion of Murray Park School plays a key part in that. Council Cabinet has already approved basic need funding of 8.5 million to increase the accommodation at Murray Park. We did that back in June this year. And the initial consultation on the proposals took place over a 6-week period, and the majority of staff and parents who responded in a positive way to the expansion. The proposals is to increase the school's admissions number from 220 to 230 as a maximum per year, which would increase the number of places up to 550 over a phased period of time, 5-year period. In terms of the final decision being made on this, there's a statutory consultation period which must now take place. But what I'm requesting from Cabinet is to give delegated authority to the Strategic Director of People, subject to there being no further comments come through the statutory consultation period, that he is given delegated authority to make this decision. But I recommend we go ahead with the expansion. Clearly, we have to ensure the sufficiency of school places. So I move as printed. Thanks.
Councillor Skelton, please.
Thank you. I was just wanting to know if there was an intention to do any travel planning, because obviously this obviously is about just over 100 more in the first obviously intake, but that will grow and grow, and there will be obviously an impact on the local area. And it would benefit very much from travel planning being done with the school to try and mitigate that.
Yes, we will. We offer that provision generally to all schools that request it, to try and look at the catchment area of a school and ensure there are safe travel plans in place for young people that attend. So that won't be any different. We will continue to offer that, yeah.
Okay, the Youth Mayor, please, thank you.
I I was just going to say, because at my school we've had quite a bit of an expansion over years, because I go to Littlehaven Community School, and in that time I think one of the things that we constantly hear from teachers is there's not enough space in this school. We have had a massive expansion, and although we've built in lots of different buildings, it can still mean that there's not enough space, and I think there's lots of different things that you really need to look at, such as counsellors. There's not enough time in the day for our counsellors to be able to work with all the different young people that need their help, and I think even the size of corridors during the day it can get so clustered. So I think there's lots of little things that from the child's point of view they tend to be overlooked, but I totally understand the whole idea of having to cater for the growing number of young people in the area, but I think that one massive part of the report should really be looking at the changes from the child's perspective and seeing those negatives.
Thanks. Thanks, Tiny. We always get the best questions from the youth mayors. Our two youth mayors always ask the best questions in this chamber, so thank you for that. You're absolutely right. I mean, look, we're living in perfect times, right? If I could, I'd use council resources to build new schools, to give young people the space in which to learn in a more fruitful manner than they currently do now, because I think some of your points are really fair about the actual physical space we have to educate our young people, and a particularly good point actually about counsellors' availability in school. The chronic underfunded in mental health services, but particularly for young people, actually I think is a national scandal, and one that needs addressing quite urgently. I'm hopeful that one cabinet minister or other during the party conference might make an announcement on that, but I'm not holding my breath. But also, if they're listening, they might want to give us a bit more money to build extra schools and not make them academies or free schools, which would be nice as well. But we live in an imperfect world, and we will, do what we can within the parameters that we have to make it as safe and as enjoyable and as free for young people as possible. So really thank you for your question.
Okay, Councillor Holmes, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just on this, as a ward councillor for Micklehove, we have been obviously liaising with residents over this. There is some concern over the expansion, but they're mostly focused on the impact of the school becoming larger and what that brings. But obviously, just to add some value for Councillor Skelton, a lot of this will be dealt with via the development control and the planning application. We can obviously, as residents or as a councillor, put forward what we would like to see as mitigation from this particular proposal. So I think that's a discussion we need to have later on, which the process will allow us to do, and we obviously as councillors in the ward will certainly do that.
Yeah, thank you, Matthew. That's a good point. I know it is a concern, these types of things, for residents, and it happened in my own ward when we expanded Benrose School. We had similar concerns raised by residents, and quite rightly, as you say, at that stage as local councillors during the development and planning phase of the build, we put forward some suggestions on how to ease some of those issues. So I think that would be an appropriate thing for you to do at that stage. But also, Matt, if you just want to have a word with Teresa and ask her for a bit more money about that'd be
I'm not so sure she'll answer the phone call.
She's a bit busy.
She might be tucked up in bed with the VIX at the moment, probably.
Well, let's not scrutinise the last remark about the Prime Minister being in bed with, what was the coin? I can't remember. Vic. Oh, right, Vicks. I thought you said, all right, so menthol. Yes, I'm glad we clarified that one. We've got our media here. We don't want to set hairs running there. Okay, any other further contributions, comments from anyone on this important item? Okay, so Cabinet to approve the recommendations as per the report. Can I have a show of hands, please? Okay, so that's approved. Agenda item number 10, development-related highway works, and that's Councillor Afzal, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This report relates to the highway works required to deal with the traffic flow from new housing development to the south of the city. Planning permission were granted in 2009, which required a number of highway improvements which are now considered to be of limited real value, and where officers have accepted that we should seek to identify alternative proposals. To enable the developments to progress, the report recommends accepting financial payments from the housing developers rather than insisting that they deliver schemes that we now do not believe are acceptable. So if the council accepts payments, then we will be required to develop and design alternative solutions, and these will be progressed by officers. So I move the recommendation that the Cabinet accept the approach outlined and that delegated approval be given to the Strategic Director Communities in Place in consultation with myself as the portfolio holder and also the Director of Finance to agree the exact level of payment from developers and to enter into any necessary agreements with both the developers and South Derbyshire District Council. Chair, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Skelton, please.
Thank you. Obviously, I understand that the traffic assessments, obviously these particular junctions, the work has been done quite some time ago, and the original traffic assessments, I think, were done in 2006. A lot has changed traffic flow-wise since then, so I just wanted some assurance that there is going to be some money set aside to actually redo and recheck those traffic assessments to make sure we're actually dealing with accurate figures, and therefore we can plan a scheme that's going to work. What we don't want, obviously, is a repeat performance of the Kingsway Retail Park traffic lights.
Councillor Afzal, would you like to respond to that?
Yes, why not, Chair? The report actually does say that the money that we will have will be actually set on alternatives, so it's all in the report, Councillor Skelton.
Councillor Graves, please.
Thank you. It was revealed last night that the amount of money that we're expecting to get will not cover the full amount of the scheme. And so there were some concerns from councillors that whether we will realise that amount of money that we need, and if we don't realise the amount of money for the scheme, how we are going to develop the scheme, where we're going to get the rest of the money from. And so obviously there was a little bit of concern about these negotiations and whether we're going to go into this in the right frame of mind.
Mr. Gartside.
Yes, thank you. Just to answer Councillor Gray's point, there isn't a quantification of what the alternative schemes will cost at this moment in time. The actual money that we will seek to secure from the developers will be the cost of the work that should have been done. So it will be based on the actual quantification of the work that's now not going to go ahead. I think we need to make sure that we take and secure as much funding as we can from the developers to give us the best opportunity to find alternatives, but the report quite clearly says that we don't know what they are just yet, and we will have to accept that by taking the money, then we have a responsibility to come back at a future point with some fit and proper schemes that will address those transport issues that have been generated by these specific housing developments.
Okay, so any other questions, contributions from anyone? So Cabinet to approve the recommendations as set out in the report. Can I have a show of hands, please? Okay, that's approved. Thank you. Agenda item number 11, revision to the National Non-Domestic Rates Policy for the award of discretionary rate relief. Over to Councillor Shanker, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So Derby City Council's discretionary rate relief policy has been updated to include national changes, mainly the introduction of 3 new reliefs: supporting small businesses relief, revaluation support relief and pub relief, which are covered in sections 19 to 21 of the revised policy. Much of the policy, including the criteria for awarding reliefs to charities and non-profit making organisations, has not changed as a result of this update, and the revised discretionary rate relief policy is at Appendix 2 of the report. The required impact equalities impact assessment has been conducted, and the consultation we needed to carry out with both the Derbyshire Police and Crime Commission and Derbyshire Fire and Rescue Service has also been carried out. So I recommend the report to Cabinet.
Okay, any contributions, comments, questions from anyone? Okay, so Cabinet to approve the recommendations as set out in the report. Can I have a show of hands, please? Okay, thank you, that's approved. Move to agenda item number 12, Derby Performance Venue. Councillor Rawson, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Developing a new performance venue on the Assembly Room site is a priority for this administration and for the future of the city. As has been outlined in the report, a new venue can act as a focal point for city centre regeneration and contribute 9.6 million every year to our local economy. It has the potential to be a real game changer for Derby. In recent days, I've met with local partners and other stakeholders to discuss our proposals and have made it clear that we will continue to work with them to develop a plan that meets the cultural expectations of the city whilst remaining affordable for the authority. In the current financial climate, this is clearly an ambitious project, but it's one we're determined to progress because it is fundamental to creating a vibrant city centre. I was delighted when we secured £8.6 million of funding from D2N2 towards the new venue. To unlock the first portion of this funding, we now need to submit an outline business case. The use of £475,000 from Assembly Room's insurance reserve will further help develop our proposals and produce an outline design for further consideration. As I've said from the outset, any new venue must be commercially driven and cannot require an ongoing subsidy from the council. As such, this work will also seek to identify potential operators whilst exploring additional funding opportunities. Tonight, I hope we'll have an honest and open discussion about what we want from our new venue and how it will be operated. We're all ambitious for Derby and can agree on the fundamental importance of this project. Now is the time to have that dialogue with each other and our cultural partners and residents as to how we can make this a reality. So following on from comments at scrutiny last night and discussions with our cultural partners, I have a revised set of recommendations which I hope have been circulated, which will provide for additional consultation with the public and with members of the cultural partners and the arts community in the city to take account of their opinion before we actually move to the stage of looking to procure an operator. So just taking a little bit longer, I think, Chair, will really make sure that we can bring everyone along with us and give everyone the opportunity to feel that they've had an input and to have put their ideas forward. So I move the recommendations as revised, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Rawson. Let's open this up starting with Councillor Holmes, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Again, the board last night, a very lively debate on this one. Obviously, the recommendations coming from the board, we have an amended version here which goes some way to addressing some of the concerns that were raised. But I think one of the key issues that I have and my group has is we feel that there is no agreed capital funding for this in terms of the long-term, medium-term financial plan. That's a huge concern because when we put it into the context of you deciding tonight to spend £500,000 and move forward to the next stage, because the cost of this project overall, this scheme, will likely be one of the largest capital investments that we're likely to see from the council in our lifetimes. I mean, it's probably no underestimation to say that this could be a 50 million project, but in the discussions I've had with many people, including officers, it's not unheard of to see the overall scheme could be up to 100 million. You know, well, you say that, but the thing is, when we take it in the round, we take it in context, the overall scheme could be significant, well, will be significantly more than the numbers that the council are talking about at the moment. I take your point, you know, 100 million is a lot of money, but it's a major investment this council will be embarking on, and yet we are nowhere near to securing that kind of funding. So the costs aren't known, and, you know, I do welcome the Labour administration coming round to the Conservative way of thinking in terms of future provision would be commercially driven, commercially managed. You know, it's a model that we need to follow, because you show me a venue in any city that is council run that turns a profit. I don't think there is one. If there is, we should be looking at their model. But I think it's probably correct to say that leisure facilities, theatre facilities, when they're under council control, management, ownership, it's very difficult for that facility to break even and wash its own face, or even turn, like we say, a profit. So those aspects are welcome in terms of seeking a commercial partner. However, I still think, even with the recommendations to go back to consultation and have a think about this, because I think one of the issues which is a real problem here is that the preferred option for this council moving forward, a lot of people feel, a lot of community groups feel, a lot of partners within the city that have experience in this area feel that they have not been consulted, they haven't had a say in terms of what the council has already decided to move forward with in terms of the facility or the model, or the, you know, and that's something which needs to be addressed. Now, I welcome that it seems to be that there is going to be dialogue. However, I still think that approving the 500,000, £500,000 now to seek consultants to move forward at this stage, I don't think you can justify that spend at this stage, at the very least, and there are many arguments that probably are for another time on that particular spend. In context of going back and actually having a rethink about this and widening the consultation, you shouldn't be approving that £500,000 spend here tonight. That should be something which you may want to consider again once you've had that dialogue.
Okay, Councillor Ross, do you want to respond to that first? Okay.
Sum up at the end, if that's all right.
Councillor Graves, please, and then Councillor Repton, and then Councillor Skelton.
Thank you very much. I'm just reading your proposed amendments to the recommendations. What I would say about that is that you're not taking into account what the Scrutiny People Committee asked for, because obviously, as Councillor Holmes had pointed out, there are some concerns on numerous issues. One of them is about the amount of money that's being spent and whether that's the amount of money we should be committing to this at this stage. But more importantly, whether the design that had come up by consultants, and maybe you can confirm this, the letter from the Derby Arts and Theatre Association that said that we spent £380,000 on consultants, and yet they didn't even consult one of the largest groups in our city that may be using this venue, and obviously not consulted anybody else in that area. That I find amazing and unbelievable that we are not dealing with this in the right way. I now feel that this issue is being rushed through. You've had years where the Assembly Rooms has been empty, you've left it empty, and suddenly you're trying to rush through this paper without actually discussing it with relevant people. The Scrutiny Board said and asked that what you do is defer this. Rather than commit the money tonight, why can you not commit the money in a month's time, 2 months' time, so that make sure you actually get it right? I don't understand why you want to commit it now and you don't want to commit it in a few months' time. That doesn't make sense to me. And I believe that we should, or you should, defer this until you've actually got everything right.
Okay, Councillor Repton, please. Thank you.
It seems to me, and it's a bit sad that we have both Councillor Holmes and Councillor Graves joining together for a little bit of negative mischief making. Councillor Graves says we're rushing it through. I can imagine if we hadn't come forward with proposals which are positive and realistic, he'd be saying, you're dragging your feet, you've left the assembly rooms all this time, you're doing nothing. So we understand that, but I don't think it's helpful for the public to be playing these silly games here in the chamber. And similarly with Councillor Holmes, I'm not sure what he's really proposing. He seems to propose that we kick it into the long grass, to do nothing about it, to have another think about it. And yet, as Councillor Rawson's explained quite clearly this evening, he's talking about a wide range public consultation with all interested groups, taking their views on board, measuring it, but also he's being realistic. He's saying what we as a council can do and what we can't do. Because the straitened times that we're in, because of all the government cuts that Derby City Council, like many councils around the country, are in. But the difference is, despite those cuts, we as an administration are still trying to say, yeah, we've got little money, but we've got ideas about the way we can move this forward. And now is the time to do that, rather than just as Councillor Holmes suggests, kick it into the long grass, or as Councillor Graves says, just play silly games with it. We're not about that. We're not going to play games with it. We're not going to kick it in the long grass. We are going to be realistic and honest with the people of Derby, but we will consult and we'll try and move one stage at a time. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Skelton, please.
Thank you. This is indeed a lot of money. As Councillor Holmes said, obviously we don't know what the final bill's going to be, and I think we need to be very, very careful. We need to take the time it takes. We don't need to be rushing things through. And I'm very concerned that right from the beginning, obviously money was given to Cushman and Wakefield, the consultants, to go away and think whatever they thought was the best idea, but it doesn't seem that they've been talking to a lot of relevant people within the city. We certainly obviously have already heard of certain groups who have a very key interest in this, have not been contacted at all. Really, everybody with an interest in this should have been talked to and consulted and helped to shape these proposals right from the beginning. It has started, Councillor Repton.
Okay, let's just not debate across the chamber.
It started when Cushman and Wakefield actually started their piece of work. And it's a great pity that the voices of people within this city were not taken into account right then. So I think the concerns of scrutiny that they expressed last night are very valid. And I do think the Scrutiny Board's first recommendation that the decision to commit and risk the almost £500,000 should be deferred until a wider consultation exercise has taken place, because obviously we've all received letters from Derby Arts and Theatre Association setting out some very important points. I mean, these are people that know what they're talking about. We ought to give them the respect they deserve and listen to them. And I'm glad to see Councillor Rawson nodding his head. But they do need, and if necessary, we need to change what we propose. As I said at the beginning, we are going to be spending a lot of money. We need to get it right. When the Assembly Rooms was first built, I think we can all agree a lot of compromise was done then for probably monetary reasons, and we ended up with a facility that didn't quite work for anything that it was supposed to work for. We don't want to make that mistake again. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Jennings, would you like to, as the head of Regen, just respond to some of those appropriate comments?
Chair, just some points for information, really, just to help the debate. Cushman and Wakefield with their theatre specialists, which IPW, Theatre Performance Venue Specialists, IPW, and HOK, as specialist architects, have had a considerable amount of conversations with organisations, whether it's CROD, the University, Derby Live, the Theatre, Theatres Trust, the Arena, the Renaissance Board, businesses, etc. However, what hasn't happened, I think, after that period of talking to people and drawing together the conclusions of their appraisals, their feasibility, what there hasn't then been is a consultation on what they feel the conclusions are. And I think what this report does, the amendments to the report, and it picks this up from scrutiny quite rightly, is say, well, actually, let's have a pause and let's consult on those conclusions. So I don't want members to think there hasn't been discussion. There has been masses and masses of discussion. But what there hasn't been, and I think scrutiny were quite correct to pick this up because it hadn't happened, was a consultation on the actual recommendations, which is the preferred option. So the report does give an opportunity to do that before any further spend takes place on further consultant work. The second point I just wanted to make is there's nothing on the capital plan at the moment for a new performance venue. There are significant risks, and whatever the cost is, it's going to be a big figure, we know that. So what the report does is try to take us a cautious step forward by doing two pieces of work on the two key risks. The first is income risk. Could we get an operator to operate this commercially? And if so, what would the income to the council be? And could we borrow against that? So that's one, to understand that risk. And to do that, you have to commence a procurement exercise, which is one of the pieces of work. The other is actually to do some initial design work. And it won't be a full design, fairly high-level design, which then helps you to control the second risk, which is about cost. So we've heard a couple of figures, is it here or is it there? And actually this will help to confirm that risk. So what this report does is take us a cautious step further forward after the consultation to help control those risks prior to coming back to Cabinet, which would be sometime, I'm assuming next summer, but not for some time yet, to see whether the council as a whole has a project which is viable and affordable and it can progress with or not. So that's a really important point. This isn't committing us to building it, it's committing us to taking a step forward to understanding the risks after, as you very rightly point out, a further round of consultation on the actual recommendations. I hope that clarification is helpful, Chair.
So Councillor Rawson, would you like to respond to the other points, please? Thank you.
Thank you, yeah. So just to address some of the other points that have been raised, in terms of the capital plan, that is something obviously that can be addressed through the budget process, and we'll be looking to do that. It doesn't commit us to, as Mr Jennings has rightly said, it's not committing us to do anything at this stage in terms of the design or the build or anything else. This report is just about taking that next step forward. It's in terms of the funding gap, there is one, that's absolutely true, and this next stage will be around identifying other potential sources of funding to bridge that gap. It's not unusual that that's the case. Some of the large projects which the council has been involved in over recent years, the waste plant, our city, our river, the A52 carriageway repairs. When we started out on the journey, there wasn't 100% funding in place, but over time you build that funding cocktail up to get you to the point where you're confident enough to be able to press the button to move forward. So it's not unusual from that point of view. In terms of consultation, Greg's mentioned that already. There have been a number of organisations and groups that have been consulted so far. That probably should have been a wider group, and I acknowledge that. But this next stage with the amended recommendations will give us the opportunity to make sure that we do speak to everyone who has an interest in this. I think it was an excellent contribution from Councillor Repton, who's really summed up, I think, where we are. It's not about rushing anything through. It's a steady, step-by-step process. we really need to take this next step in order towards moving us forward to the point where we will be able to deliver this really exciting project for the people of Derby. And yes, it's about culture and entertainment and supporting the arts in the city, but it's also about the economy. This can be a real game changer in terms of the city centre, in terms of drawing people into Derby who will then spend in the shops and the restaurants, and it's really, really important piece in the jigsaw for the city centre that we do move forward in a cautious way, Chair, but nevertheless that we do maintain the momentum and we do move forward. Okay, so Cabinet to approve the recommendations as set out in the report as revised. I was about to say as revised. Cabinet to show of hands, please. Okay, thank you. Agenda item number 13, the Contract and Financial Procedures Matters Report. Councillor Shanker, please. Thank you.
Thank you again, Chair. So this is a routine report brought to Cabinet which updates us on various financial procedural matters, namely for acceptance of grants, procuring of contracts and the award of a grant. The items and recommendations are listed from 2.1 to 2.6 of the report. Thank you.
Okay, any questions or contributions from anyone on this report? Okay, Cabinet to approve the recommendations set out in the report. Can I have a show of hands, please? Thank you. Okay, agenda item is not for decision, it's for just to update the Cabinet about progress made in terms of the twinning links with the city of Hefei in China. Councillor Rawson, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. There's never been a better time for Derby to look beyond its borders to secure prosperity for our city and its residents. It may sound contradictory, but as a local authority, we cannot afford to be parochial. With Brexit creating an uncertain economic climate, we must look further afield for opportunities to secure trade and investment. Derby and Derbyshire have done it before. Toyota's plant at Burnaston is evidence of what can be achieved when we work with partners at regional, national and international level to encourage investment into our region. Our burgeoning relationship with Hefei in China and the initial work undertaken to build links with India follows in that tradition. The benefits of these international relationships may not be realised overnight, nor are they a panacea for the challenges that we as a local authority face. But with time, I'm confident they will yield real benefits for Derby's people. And these partnerships are not just a one-way street. I believe Derby has a lot to offer in return. The political relationships we develop today can open up new markets for local businesses looking to expand in the future. What is more, the Chinese in particular value our expertise in delivering public services, and their own population continues to grow and their citizens become more affluent. I hope that colleagues here tonight can see this report for what it is, an opportunity to create a stronger future for our city. If we as a city are going to be outwardly ambitious, then we must be prepared to play on the international stage, working with partners through the Midlands Engine and working with central government. This report really sets that in context and sets the direction of travel as we continue to develop those international links. Fully endorse the contents of the report, Chair, and ask Cabinet to note the contents.
Okay, before I bring some speakers in, I think it's worth just thanking the previous Conservative administration for doing the original work in the earlier part of the strategy. It was Councillor Hickson that set us on the road of identifying Herefey as a city. He commissioned a report from the former head of regeneration, Richard Williams, who obviously now is no longer with us, who works at Nottingham City Council. And so we made it a priority, especially during the talk of Brexit, when there was clear concern that, you know, there was a likelihood that we were going to leave Europe. And this also, satisfies the concerns of those that, argued for Brexit. Their arguments, if you look at all the reports, is that, you know, the country should be standing on its own 2 feet. In fact, a lot of the literature I've read from UKIP talks about China and building international links. So this is one of those agendas that I think is cross-party. In fact, when Barry Lewis, the incoming Conservative leader at the County Council, after the elections became leader, we arranged a meeting to brief him personally on the progress that we had made with our international links, and particularly Herefey and Anway. And I know that Councillor Barry Lewis is very keen to continue to work in partnership with the City Council, because he recognises the value of this and the important work we're doing in terms of boosting trade and investment and developing tourist links that will benefit not just the city economy but the regional economy. And can I also add that the British ambassador to China, based in Beijing, recently visited the region and held a meeting inviting leaders from the public and private sector to come and talk to her and convey the government's appreciation, encouragement and desire that cities have an opportunity and the full support and backing of government, and in fact financial support, because the bulk of the cost is met by the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. And actually, in fact, by sheer coincidence, the Consul General based in Shanghai, who reports into the British Ambassador, a gentleman called John Edwards' father is actually from Spondon. So when we met him during the Midlands Engine, in fact I've got a video of him, which he said, look, go back to Derby, go back to the city of my father's birth, and the people of Spondon, no doubt, where his father grew up, and say this is absolutely the right thing to do. You know, Brexit has given us huge challenges, whether we agree with it or not. One thing is for sure, there is huge economic turmoil, but through that the argument has been put, and we have to accept it now, and we do accept it as the Labour Party, that Brexit is going to happen, but we've got to be visionary and think ahead, and rather than kind of probably moan and argue a bit, we are criticised for doing that, about what the government isn't doing for us. This is an agenda where we do have cross-party support, and we do recognise that actually we do get government support, and actually we are now an exemplary authority, because we've come from nowhere really on this agenda, and again thanks to the previous Conservative administration to drawing up the original strategy and identifying Herefey. They didn't unfortunately get a chance to implement it because they lost control of the council, but we're now continuing that journey. So we look forward to working cross-party, across this chamber, to get us the economic trade deals that we need for businesses, and also cross-party with obviously Derbyshire County Council under the Conservative leadership there, and to continue to support the small businesses, the SMEs that attended the Midlands Engine event here, that are absolutely enthusiastic and identify the opportunity. They have been saying for many, many years that for them to continue to grow their businesses, they want to be able to break into the fastest growing economies in the world, and one of those economies, obviously the fastest growing economy in the world, and it's worth noting that China GDP is growth projections are about 5 or 6%. Ours are, I think, languishing. I think they've been revised, and apologies if I get my figures wrong, but I don't think they're at 1%. I think they're just under that, and it's a much, much smaller economy. The city we've identified, the city the previous Conservative administration identified in Herefey, GDP figures a couple of years ago, and I don't have the latest ones, but was 40 billion. They are one of the fastest growing cities in China. And can I also, before I open this up, say that we are, in the next week or so, going to make an exciting announcement, which we can't make tonight, unfortunately. I have briefed Cabinet, about that, but we are looking to arrange a media briefing that we have got a major announcement to make that is going to take us to the next level. I can't share that tonight, I'm afraid, because the details are still being worked out, and I don't want to set hairs running, because then naturally other questions are going to be asked which I can't answer at the moment. But we have asked our officers to arrange for the media to come in and to brief them. But it is a massive step, an historic step in this city, and where we will be able to be, to take us to the next level. So we will be transparent and open, and the report does talk about that. And we have been never anything other than transparent and open. In fact, when we went to the Midlands Engine, our local media, particularly the Derby Telegraph, ran a very excellent series of articles, including any associated costs. The breakdown was provided in that, because that was one of the questions clearly they were going to ask, so that's already been out there. We have been transparent, throughout that. The Foreign and Commonwealth Office have also been transparent, throughout our relationship and progress that we've made, and we'll continue to do that. So, really exciting times. I think this is exactly what, if you look at all the speeches of especially those people that have supported, Brexit, they talk about opportunities, being bold, and right, don't be, depressed about it. Let's get out there and talk to the world. This is exactly what we're doing. So I would like to think, without being presumptuous, that we will surely get cross-party support, because actually all the language and the rhetoric out there so far has been about that. We are now doing it. Let's see if people put their money where their mouth is. Thank you. I just want to bring in Councillor Repton in first, if that's okay.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully Councillor Graves will support the proposals here tonight, because I think this is excellent potential news for the people of Derby. I know that the Labour group is 100% behind the leader and the leadership on the initiative in China, and about all the opportunities that this opens up for us. And you see under 6.1, creating jobs in Derby as a result of this direct and indirect investment and visitor spend, opening opportunities for Derby companies to export in new markets, creating the potential for investment from Chinese and Indian companies into projects and companies in Derby, and so on and so forth. These are things that have already the seeds have been sown. And as the leader has said, we saw what happened when that softly approach, but determination approach was taken with regard to Toyota, where they invested tens of millions of pounds on a site but barely 5 miles from here, and all the opportunities in the supply chain, and the employment opportunities, and the wealth of this region. I believe this similarly could lead to great advances in this city. And we're rightly concentrating on those BRIC countries, particularly India and China. As the leader said, I certainly was not in favour of Brexit, because it poses all sorts of risks to this country and to this area. But if we are going to make a success of it, because that's the way the country has voted just to move forward, we need to make those opportunities for making deals and building relationships with companies in China and in India. So it is an excellent news, Chair. Hopefully everybody in this chamber tonight and in Derby will be behind you and the rest of this leadership in moving this forward, because I think potentially we can all benefit from it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And I think it's worth noting the support we've had from business, and we've attended a number of consultation events talking to business, and whether they're, as I said, SMEs or the big corporates, local entrepreneurs, it's been absolutely phenomenal, and it's kind of support that normally, naturally you think on party political lines the Conservatives would get, but it proves the point that actually this is not about party politics. Having businesses, whether they support the Conservatives or whatever, it's not relevant. Everybody agrees. This is absolutely the missing link, and one of the things we tasked officers with, just to be able to explain it to the wider public, is there's a lot of activity going on, but we're not that clear about how to communicate the economic progress that we've made over the last few years and where the city centre master plan fits in, where the 50 pledges fits in. So we've tasked officers, Mr Jennings, to produce what I'm calling the 4 pillars of Derby's economic strategy, focused on local, regional, national and international links. And what we've done is identify some weak areas, and actually it's developing those pillars that clearly, if we're going to have a successful post-Brexit local economy and not obviously collapse to some of the negatives that obviously people have expressed their concerns about, there's got to be a strong international focus. So Councillor Holmes, please.
Thank you, Chair. The Council is absolutely right to be reaching out internationally for investment in the city. That can't be argued, and I welcome that. I think what I would say is that communication is the key to get that message across, that there is value in this, and just to be cautious to ensure that costs don't spiral out of control in terms of, they can sometimes quickly spiral out of control and become an industry and upon themselves, really, with satellite offices and everything else. So the bottom line to this, really, if I was in your shoes, Chair, would be to ensure that that's clearly communicated. I hope, obviously, any concern that I have over demonstrating value will be blown out of the water with this exciting announcement in the coming days. I hope that's the case. Certainly for the city, it's something which I'm very much looking forward to hearing about. But I think that would be it, really. It's China, obviously, undoubtedly an area we need to be exploring, and in the report India too. But we're going to stage 2 of this, India, and we have to ensure as we move along that this is best value to taxpayers, and if that can be demonstrated, if we can show that the relatively modest investment, which can still mount up, when we're talking about local decisions, keeping a facility open or investing in this, when on the balance sheet the amount of money that could be allocated to this can be comparable or compared to that. That's where the challenge is. But hopefully, as I say, it sounds like you are going to be announcing something very exciting in the coming days, which will probably put all those concerns to bed.
I think it's worth pointing out that this is very much a long term. Any relationship, you don't enter into any relationship or a marriage that we're going to be actually married for 4 years and I want to see return in a couple of days. I use that, when I mean relationships, it is exactly that. These are getting to know people, getting to know cultures, getting to know those relationships. Councillor Skelton, please.
Thank you. Yes, doing business in China is indeed there has to be a lot of developmental work done first, a lot of groundwork, and obviously some years ago the seed was sown and it's now starting to push through the soil, to use a different analogy. And it's very good news to hear that. I think it needs to be pointed out, though, that the underlying thing, we're leaving Europe. Well, we're not leaving Europe. We will never leave Europe because we are Europe. We are geographically Europe, and our neighbours will always be important to us. So it's a question of both. I think perhaps in the past this country has not done that particularly well. But if you look at, for example, Germany, they have done very well within trading within Europe, and also better than we have, for example, trading with China. So I think we have a lot of catching up to do.
Councillor Skelton, I finally found a cause that we can have a drink over, which is Europe. So as somebody, sorry? Well, no, I meant a cup of tea, or a cup of coffee, or an orange juice or something. I think Councillor. Yeah, thank you. Any other contributions, comments for anyone? Okay, Councillor Raju, please.
Thank you, Chair. As we all know, this weekend gone was the Derby Fest Day, and I had the pleasure of being at Quad where it was officially opened, and I met 2 Chinese students from the University of Hefei. And they were absolutely fascinated by what we were doing. And whilst we've talked about the benefits of trade with Derby, I think there's a definite benefit of increased tourism to the city. And their parting comments to me was, we're going to go back and spread the word. And in this chamber a couple of months ago, I met with a lot of people from the University of Hefei, and They were fascinated with what Derby has to offer in terms of the emerging microbrewery industry here in the city, as well as Royal Crown Derby. And they were almost horrified when I said that Derby's got apparently is one of the most haunted cities in the country. So they want to know more about the ghost walks. There's lots of things we can offer. So the more links we build with Hefe, the long term, as you've mentioned, is good for the city.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Raju. Councillor Graves, please.
Thank you, Councillor Banwaite. I'd like to congratulate you on your positive remarks towards Brexit. I thought that was very revealing and very enlightening. I'm very pleased to hear that you are now embracing the idea of Brexit and that you're doing it in a very positive way. Excellent. That is really, really good. And a little bit unfortunate that the report is a little bit negative about Brexit, but your comments were completely the opposite. They were very positive. We have a wide world out there, and even trading with people in the European countries. But the fact that we want to trade with China is indeed a very ambitious idea, and obviously we welcome that. There were some concerns from the Conservatives over there that we wonder whether they will bring any fruit to this city, and hopefully we will sit here and you will listen to your announcements and find out whether the money that we are investing in China is actually going to come back tenfold, 20-fold, whatever it is. Because obviously that is the proof of the pudding, is the fact of how it manifests itself. I agree with you, it's long term. And I agree with you that what we have to do is sell our city, the positive city that we've got in Derby. We've got a lot of things that we need to sell, and hopefully we can go forward on that. But I do congratulate you on your positiveness about Brexit. Thank you very much.
Okay, so any questions or contributions from anyone? Okay, so again, I just refer you to the aspects of the report that actually shows some of the progress made in terms of whether it's the schools twinning links, that a number of our schools are going to be going, that we've made introductions for the University of Derby. Again, if you want tangible links, don't just roll up to the council asking us, talk to those partners, go up to the University of Derby that have already grasped that and are working towards that, whether it's the businesses we've already introduced that, they will ultimately carry that message. And so, as I said, over the next couple of days, I've already asked Mr. Jennings' team to, arrange for our local media to get in. If we can please get those dates in as soon as possible. Obviously, I know that the Telegraph will be wanting to know, getting a date in, getting in his date. So if we get that arranged, that'd be great. So this report is for noting, but can I have a show of hands? Oh yes, I beg your pardon. There was some recommendations for revenue scrutiny, and they were those sentiments have been echoed about, cautious in our approach, making sure that we kind of, manage the costs appropriately. And I kind of make that point again, the vast majority of costs have actually been met by the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. So yes, it is all public funds, but whether it's the council or government, but we are in partnership here with central government. And I have to say, I'm very satisfied that I can go back and to convey to the Foreign and Commonwealth Office and the British Ambassador that we have got cross-party support here, and already businesses is on side, the entrepreneurs are on side, but it's good to know that politically we can agree on this agenda as well. So can I have a show of hands from the cabinet? Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, that was the last item. So have a safe journey home. Thank you. Can I just ask colleagues just to have a quick chat afterwards, if that's okay? Thank you.